In case you're new here, you have tuned into Have You Read This? The critically acclaimed and award-winning podcast for bookworms, lovers of sarcasm, and coffee addicts. If you are a regular subscriber, please tell your therapist we said hello. Buckle your seatbelts and prepare for the worst, because it's time for another episode.
I lay on my bed in late afternoon, watching a patch of light move across the floor, my throat tight, my body still. This is the saddest part of any day, when too much time has passed to create happiness while it is still light out. It's too late. The daylight has been squandered on my immobility. The patch of light falls still. It begins to fade. It will be better when it is gone. This is only one day, I remind myself. And it is very nearly over.
So the reason that you are here is because, first of all, you got to say hello to my listener in Uruguay. I forgot about them. So
Hi, guys.
Well, it's a guy. Well, it's one person, I think.
Oh, yeah.
There's not enough analytics to
We're
say
trying
that
to expand
there's.
the community.
It's like, I think it's like if you look at the stats, there's like 98% US, and then it's like less than 1% is in Uruguay. So it's maybe half a person. It's an infant.
We don't even know.
Whoever it is, they have a Spotify account and they've tuned in probably on accident, and it was maybe just one time. But the reason you're here is because the 4 people that have listened to this podcast were tired of just my voice. And since you're a captive in the house, I thought I'm going to drag you in and make you do this podcast. So this is, for those listening, this is my oldest daughter, Lauren. And instead of an allowance or rent, we're forcing her to read books and to join me on a podcast. But I thought it would be kind of cool, since we do both read a lot. We read, I think it would be safe to say that we read pretty different genres of books. Is that right?
Yeah, no, most definitely.
Most definitely, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that I read where I'm kind of, I hope you would never read it, and because it would make me feel like a terrible parent if I knew you were reading some of this stuff. And it's probably not a great example for me to set, but I thought we both like reading good books, and I don't. Maybe this is, I don't know. See, this is a fair question. Would you say that you don't really care necessarily about the genre as long as the book is good? Would you think that's fair?
Oh, yeah, no, for sure.
So you're not like, well, I'll read anything as long as it's romance or as long as it's true crime or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I read tons of nonfiction horror, and I kind of got, I don't know, not stuck, but that's really what I enjoy reading. But to kind of expand my horizons a little bit, we are doing a challenge. And the challenge is, and we thought it would be fun for you to start by, you suggest a book for me to read. And I don't know if we didn't really put official rules on it. We didn't type them up and sign an agreement, right? But what did we agree on? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like, okay, what, you got to suggest a book, but it can't just be, well, I like this book and I just want you to read it, right? It was something like, you have to think that I would I would actually enjoy it, and it couldn't be anything that would show up on my radar.
Right, that you would pick. Yeah.
Right. And did we put any other rules?
I don't think so. It just had to be a good book.
Just had to be a good book,
yeah.
And it just had to be something that you think that I would like. So you decided to crush my soul with this book. So it was, it's the book that you selected was If He Had Been With Me, Laura Nolan. Is that right?
Yeah.
Why did you pick that book?
I think I picked that book because it's a book that you would have never picked ever. And yeah, I don't think any romance book you would have picked, but most definitely that one because it's so sad. But I don't know. I've read a lot of thrillers that I think you would like, but since this was out of your comfort zone,
So you mentioned the book is sad, and I think it's sad. We talked about this beforehand. We're going to get to a point in the podcast where, like, all right, we're going to talk about we're going to give away some stuff about the plot
Yeah.
But we'll give you a warning so that you can shut this off if you haven't read this. But I don't know. Like, I've seen this thing all over TikTok. Do you think that there's anybody that hasn't read this yet? Are we doing a podcast about a show, about a book that everybody's already read by now?
Well, actually, on my book talk, I've posted a lot about this. I've kind of posted too much about it, actually. But
well, you aren't the only one.
yeah,
I've seen it
that's
everywhere.
true.
I actually, I stumbled across an account. I should have remembered this. They actually have, like, the whole account is dedicated to just this book and then the follow up.
Oh my gosh.
That's it. It's the whole thing. That's all they post about is this. And it's like these sad looking Pinterest board collage type things. And I love it and I hate it. I love it because I did enjoy it. But so you said, and I want to go back to this, you said the book is sad. I don't know. Do you think the whole book is sad?
I don't know. For me personally, when I read it, I think it has a sad ambiance. Like, I don't know, like when I first started reading it, it's like, starts out a little bit slower. And some people thought it was too slow. Like, I remember telling you that. Some people were like, I couldn't get through the first 45 pages because it's just too slow. But I've read slower books for sure.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I wouldn't say this was slow. But I think that it has almost a sad ambiance, just the way that she writes it. Like, you're kind of expecting something bad by the time you're getting through it. But the way she builds the characters, I don't know, it feels like kind of somber.
Yeah, I guess I'd agree. I remember after I read it, you've actually encouraged me not to look at the reviews a lot.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's kind of like YouTube comments. You get down a rabbit hole, and sometimes I'm guilty of, I look at it too much, and I'm letting some of those things form my opinions before I read like too much about it. I saw a lot of comments about that where they said this book took forever, or it was too slow, or it was boring. And to me, it was the exact opposite. I didn't think it was slow at all.
Yeah.
I thought the pace was pretty intentional.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I think it's different because for book talk, I think like most of these books are really fast paced, and some of them don't even have that big of a plot. It's just they're so fast paced, like event after event after event. And this one wasn't as fast paced. Like, it wasn't slow, but it definitely wasn't as fast as some of these other book talk books or some of the thrillers that are like something happens on the first page and you don't know what's going on. Which this actually kind of does. Something happens on the first page, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's not slow paced at all. But if you're comparing it to something like a Colleen Hoover book, that's something that's you're going through a lot faster, then I can see how somebody would see it was slow or say it was slow.
You just mentioned, you brought up
Sadly.
Colleen Hoover. Am I going to have to edit that out?
You may have to. I don't want to speak the name.
So for those who do not know you, what is speaking of Colleen Hoover, how can people find you on TikTok? What is your username?
So we actually ran into this earlier at a bookstore we were at, and the lady was talking to us and she was like, well, what are your all's book talks? She was talking about Colleen Hoover earlier, and I was like, oh my gosh, I really hope that she doesn't love Colleen Hoover. And I was like, my book talk name is Your Favorite Coho Hater.
Right.
And we both kind of looked at each other and we were like, oh, I hope she's not a fan.
But it's funny you mentioned that, because like I thought I want to create one that's like your favorite Stephen King hater.
Yeah.
Or Stephen King actually sucks or something.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that he sucks, but I feel like that there's a lot of people that heap praise on some of his books unnecessarily, just only because his name's attached to it. But anyway, we're not hammering out Stephen King or Colleen Hoover. I would agree with you about this book when you say that it's sad, like overall sad. To me, I don't know if you got this vibe, and part of me even hates bringing this movie up because this whole series to me was a little overrated, but Twilight. When you watch the movie Twilight, the way that they filmed it with the rain and all of it has an atmosphere kind of to it. And I think this book, it does the same thing, but it's very intentional.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
I've talked about a good bit of books on this podcast. I don't think that I'm trying to remember, have I ever even read a romance book.
This
Like,
might have been the first.
This might have been the first, and it was an excellent recommendation, but we should probably even tell everybody, like, how would you describe this? So like, if you had to give me this book to read all over again, because I don't remember how you described it. I don't even remember you do describing it. I think you were just like, here's this book. I think you'll like it. It's sad. For somebody that hasn't heard of this book or wants to know what it's about, how would you describe without giving anything away, how would you describe this to somebody?
I think that it's a really good book if you're starting out reading, especially if you don't know what genre you want to get into, or if you want to get into romance and you don't know anything about it. There are some trigger warnings that should probably be looked at before you read it, but yeah, I think that the book is written so well. And if you want to feel like some of these books that you read, you have a good plot, but you don't get connected to the characters at all. But this book like really makes you feel like the characters are real, like you just saw them yesterday and you could actually go talk to them right now. Like, it just feels like they're so close to you, and you have like, they have a place in your heart literally after you finish the book. And there's not that many books that I've read that I feel so close to a character like that. Like, some of them it's just like I know exactly what they're like, or I don't know. But I feel like I felt so connected to the characters, and that's really rare for a book. And this author just did a really good job with the way she built up the book. And it is a little bit bigger. I mean,
what do you mean bigger? You're talking about like, you feel like the overall length of the thing? So,
I mean, like it's not an average book, right?
How many pages? It was like 350, 380 in that range, I think.
Yeah, it's 380. You're right.
Around 380.
Yeah.
And the only reason that I know that is because when I got, I think, to the last 100 pages around there, we were at a coffee shop. And at that point, I was 110% vested in this thing. I was a part of the story. And I remember asking you, where do I need to stop reading? Because I just I felt like at some point I was going to get to the part where everybody had a hard time with, and I didn't want to do it in a coffee shop, because I'm an old fart now, and I don't need anybody to see me crying in a coffee shop. But in terms of the plot, though, how would you describe this plot to somebody that didn't know anything about this book without giving anything away?
I think that this author does a really good job. And now I'm actually on the sequel of the book right now. And it's happening again with the way that she builds the book. Like, the plot, I think so many people thought it was slow because she spends so much time building up to the climax. Like, a lot of people want it to be super quick, and then the rest of the book is just resolving all the problems. But she took such a long time, but like a good amount of time, to build up to the climax. And then the climax happens kind of towards the end of the book, and you're like, whoa, like what just happened? But I think that she did a really good job like leading up to that.
But so overall, though, you would say it's a love story?
Yeah, I would say romance for sure.
So romance and the general plot line, and some of this is kind of hard to talk about without giving everything away, because it's weird. Like you said, the very first page, she reveals a great deal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, so that wasn't pleasant. And you're telling me that the rest of the book is sad. So are we heading downhill? And I'm trying to think of the best way to summarize it and see how I'm doing. I would say, okay, this story, how old are these folks, by the way?
They're teenagers.
So teenagers, we're looking high school, that kind of age. There is a young lady and a young man, and they've been friends. What did they grow up next door to each other?
Yeah.
Forever?
Yeah, for their whole life.
So whole life been friends, and then they had, was it middle school where they had like it wasn't like a fight or a separation. It was just kind of like, we're just not in the same we're not in the same group at school. Is that the way to how you put it?
They kind of grew apart.
Right. But there was still like tension there. Mm-hmm. And all the characters now have significant others. So you're kind of getting multiple storylines. You're getting the main characters who are in relationships, and then you're getting the tension, and I guess a lot of times like friction between them. And then I'm trying to remember. There was some issues with the parents,
Yeah.
right? Like the parents had. Do you remember that? Like Finn's parents. It was only his mother. Is that right? That
Right.
he lived with.
Yeah.
The father was not in the picture.
Right.
Had given them. And gosh, I feel dumb now because like I feel like I just read this, and all I can remember is just the feeling that I got from it. I can't remember all the details.
No, and that's so powerful. from
But
the
like
book.
the dad wasn't in the picture, but he paid for the mother to have a house.
Yeah.
And she lived next to Autumn.
Right.
And Autumn's parents were kind of like the mothers. They actually called them the mothers, didn't
Right.
they?
Yeah.
So the mothers were like really close.
Yeah.
And Autumn's dad wasn't, he was kind of in the picture, but he kind of
Yeah.
wasn't.
Kind of absent, but he was there. But
And then there's the friends, and then there's the who. So would you say that there's any other characters worth bringing up?
I don't know. I mean,
Like Autumn's boyfriend, is he worth talking about?
I don't know. I didn't really like him. I didn't. What was your take on him?
Yeah, I didn't. So, and I don't know if I'm giving anything away. I don't think I am, but and it's hard to explain it. I didn't like him, but I think I would love to interview this author about this because
Oh yeah.
I don't feel like she wrote that guy intentionally as a bad person, but because from the very beginning, when you read about Autumn and Finn, it just makes sense for them to kind of be together.
Yeah.
And so when she writes in these other characters and they're dating, you're like, what are you doing? Like, this is not this is not the happy ending that I was wanting. Why are you introducing this? But he's kind of, I don't know. He's not, I guess I'm indifferent. I don't think he's good or bad, kind of in the way. And
yeah, I think I felt the same way.
Like, I don't know if you picked this up, but there's scenes where Autumn is talking to him and she'll say like, I love you, but it doesn't feel like she's, I don't know. It doesn't feel like she's committed to say, it's like she's saying it because she's in a relationship and they've been together for a long time.
Right.
And her friends have been in relationships, and it's kind of like, okay, this is the next thing that I do in a relationship is like, I love you. But I don't know. There's part of me, the way that she wrote this, I don't think she believes it. Like, when you were thinking about Autumn's relationship outside of Finn, how would you describe that?
With Jamie's? Like hers with Jamie's? I don't know. I felt like he was kind of in the way too, but also I think I was comparing him to Finn.
Yes.
Like, and compared to Finn, I don't know, he didn't really stand much of a chance in my mind. And I wrote on so many pages, like, I was like, oh, Finny would never do that. Like, I was like, Finny would never say that to her or think that about her or like manipulate her in a way, like, I don't know. Between Finny and Autumn, it just felt more pure, and even just their friendship than it did with Autumn and Jamie's. It just felt like there was like a forced high school relationship, like everybody's dating, so we kind of have to too.
Yeah, like a status kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you did, like I don't want to be alone.
Right.
But it's like she wanted to. Maybe if she said I love you and she acted like it was a real relationship enough, maybe she would kind of feel that way in her head to get away from Finn. But in the whole book, she's not with Finn, but yet there's this tension between them. And this is why I thought the author did really good and why I thought that it was paced so well, because she didn't come out and say, well, Autumn just spent all of this time and all she does is want Finn and she loves Finn and all that. I think she infers it. Yeah. With all the things that they're doing. And like, I don't know. I just kind of felt like Autumn kind of doubted herself. But so I remember, I think I was about halfway through and you were asking me like, well, what do you think? And I didn't feel like it was slow at all. I was hooked. I was like really hooked. Yeah. It's one of the books that I was kind of chewing through it pretty quickly. I looked up and I think very fast I had made it about halfway through. And I thought, this is excellent. I really love how she's building everything. And like you said, I felt like I was there at whatever high school they were or lived in their subdivision. Like I could just imagine Jamie pulling up, this is just what I'm thinking. But I remember telling you that this is only Autumn's perspective.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, and this is before I knew that there was another book, but I remember thinking, gosh, how much more powerful of a story this could be if we heard more than just one side of it.
Right.
That was another thing. Of course, then there's, the second book. We talk about that here later, where that's actually what you're getting. But
Okay, so since you hadn't read a romance book though before, what were you even thinking? Like when I suggested this?
I don't know. That's a good question, because I knew you knew or know that I don't read I guess light books. Like I
Yeah.
like heavier topics, darker books. I've read a lot of, I guess I'd say darker, I've read a ton of books like on serial killers.
Right.
So I didn't think you were going to give me a book that was like a written version of a Hallmark Christmas movie,
Yeah.
and I kind of didn't really know what to expect. And I was really honestly trying to go into it without some kind of expectation, because I felt like if I did that and it started to go a different direction, then I might mentally tune out of it. All I knew was, like, by most accounts, the book was sad. So I was just waiting at any moment for that,
Right.
just to be stomped on emotionally.
Yeah.
But she didn't. And we were at a novel romance today, and we were talking about how she wrote this book. She didn't need a lot of complicated language
Right.
or fancy plot lines. It's I guess if I had to summarize it super, super quick, it would be two people who were by the universe meant for them to be together.
Yeah, exactly.
And they weren't together.
Yeah.
And we're all having to, like, suffer through it.
Right, you're just going through life knowing that these two people should be together and they're both confused about it, and like you're like, guys, just get together, please.
Do
Like,
you think that they were confused about it?
I think Autumn was confused.
Really?
I think not confused in the way that she didn't know who she wanted to be with, but confused as in she didn't know what to do about how she was feeling or how she could even go about it,
Because I think to complicate it, they would have been entirely different friend groups.
Yeah.
Because she wore like a princess tiara.
Yeah, she did.
She dressed probably different than the way that I got it was that Finn was more preppy, more athletic.
Yeah.
Because was it soccer that was his
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah, for sure.
So he was like a preppy athlete, and apparently all the girls were like fawning over the guy.
Right.
And just the classic good looks. He had a fancy car that his dad bought him. And then I don't even know, like, what type of a group would you put her, like, alternative? I don't even know how to word it.
I don't know. I had a whole entire Pinterest board that I made just for this book. I'm looking it up now. I don't know. I had a lot of, I don't know exactly what genre or like group she would be in.
I think she was hard to label.
Yeah, she was. She was just like her own type of person.
But didn't she say that she wouldn't really fit in with like the popular people?
Right. Which I agree. I think
And, I did a Pinterest board on all the serial killer books that I read, but then like the FBI contacted me and said, "Hey, you can't do that.
You've read too many, you know too much."
You've known too, or we need to ask you some questions about your Pinterest board.
Exactly.
Excuse me, sir. So like it's safer to do Pinterest boards about if he had been with me.
Yes, for
But
sure.
so I want, for those of you that are listening and you haven't read this and you're like, okay, you guys have said it's sad. If you don't want to hear any more about the plot, we're going to start talking about why specifically that it's sad. So if like spoilers are not your thing, would go ahead and shut this off, go read the book, and then pick it up and listen to it again towards the end. But when I got to the end, we were at the coffee shop, and I think I I don't know. Do you remember where you stopped me? It was like 20 pages left.
Yeah, I think I stopped you about 20 pages.
And I had a hard time. I was like, no, you know what? I've read some pretty terrible things. I'll get to this. But then I just felt like when I got to the end, and again, if this is like the last time, if you don't want spoilers. So you get to the end, and obviously Finn is dead.
Right.
And then, and as if that's not bad enough, I remember reading this and looking over at you and being like, oh my gosh, you're a terrible person for recommending this book. Like, because it's just like, here's these amazing people. They should be together. Clearly they love each other. They start hanging out. They're realizing it. And then it's just stripped away.
Yeah.
So fast. And I was so mad at you for recommending this book. And then she's pregnant.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's even worse. Like, I just wanted to throw the book up against the wall. And I thought, how dare you finish a book like this?
Right.
Like, how dare you?
And so if you guys haven't read the sequel, like, you should most definitely read it, because Finney's point of view is in that. And oh my gosh, it gets worse. It gets so much worse. If you think that was bad, you just wait.
So since we're talking about spoilers, actually, you know what? We can't even talk about spoilers because I haven't even read
I can't
the follow
spoil
up.
it for
So
you.
you're not allowed to.
Right.
I can just imagine the frustration because you could understand how they probably had these feelings, and I'm just guessing, but they probably had these feelings, but I think what you said was great. Like, she didn't really know how to go about it.
Right.
You've got your friends, you're in this group. It's almost like they're two different worlds.
Yeah.
And you don't know how to bring them together. And I can just only imagine what it's like that if you're getting his point of view and it's just as soul crushing as this first book.
Yeah. It's
so
bad.
I guess one other question that I had for you about this book would be, I always like to finish these podcasts and say, okay, if you like this book, here's another one that I would recommend. So obviously, if you like this book, there's the follow-up, and I'm looking over at your bookshelf trying to remember.
I think
it's If I Had Told Her.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So, and it's not really a sequel, right?
No, it is. I think it's a sequel.
Because doesn't it overlap? Doesn't it tell similar parts of the story just from his point of view, or is it legit a sequel?
I don't know. It's most definitely a sequel. She's calling it a sequel. Laura is, but it does overlap, but not in a way that you can tandem read it. It's not like the whole book is the same as If He Had Been With Me, but then it's Finney's point of view. Like, you have 3 different people's point of views, and you get different storylines. So you actually get the aftermath of what everything happened.
No way.
Yeah. So everything, you get the aftermath of friends and family and stuff. So it's
no wonder it's worse.
Yeah, I'm having to take my time through it because this is the last book we get of this.
She's not doing any. Well,
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. So this is the last book we get of these characters.
Unless it was like fast forward and then here's their child.
Right.
But I just I can't imagine. Like, so I guess if you like this book, obviously get the follow up.
Right.
And then is there anything that stands out as your mind of like, okay, I've read this. If you like this kind of book, here's something else. And you know, I don't know if you want to give it away because this might be something that you would recommend to me to read for another challenge, but do you have anything that stands out like that?
This book I think is so uniquely its own type of genre. Like, it's technically YA romance, like whatever, but it's such a different type of thing because it builds it up so differently. And then you have this traumatic incident at the end where Finney's dead and you literally don't know what to do with yourself because you're so used to this group. Like, their souls are literally attached.
It's still so sad. It's so fresh. That's how vested I was.
So long. I cried so long. But
how talented of an author is that?
Yeah,
to write something where you're like, you feel a part of it.
Yeah.
And I'd have to go back and look at my Goodreads to see when I finished it, but it is still sad.
Yeah. Oh,
to
no,
me.
It for sure is. So something that I can think of that's sort of like that is Christina Lauren's Love and Other Words. And I'm looking at my bookshelf right now, but it's similar to this book in the way that it's friends to lovers and they're growing up together and they're falling in love. And it's just such a unique book because you get so attached to these characters. I would not say it's sad as much as this book was. But I literally can't think of something that's as gut-wrenching that's also a romance. So it's definitely a one-of-a-kind book. But I would recommend Love in Other Words because Christina Lauren, that's actually two authors that write under like one name. And I think they do such a good job with making these characters feel like you know them. Because I still have such a big attachment to those characters. Like I read that book on my Kindle and I had to get the physical copy so that I could go through and like annotate it.
And I was trying to think, even though that this is probably the first romance book that I've read, I guess in the past several years anyway, I was trying to think, okay, well, if I was going to recommend something based on this, I would have a hard time coming up with that too. I don't know if I've read anything like this. I think if you're wanting something sad, then A Little Life pops into my head instantly. And that's another book where the author did so well at creating characters so vividly that you feel like it's somebody that you know in real life.
Right.
Like I could imagine being a Target and being like, that's him.
Yeah.
And there's it's not torture, but in a way it's like an emotional landslide in a way, but it's this gradual build and it's just so incredibly sad, all of it. And so that would be one that I would recommend. So if you're looking for something sad, then definitely read that. But I think after this, I can't remember what I read, but I was like, I have to read something that's a little bit happier.
Right.
Then I think
nothing on your TBR, basically.
No.
You got to find something else.
I think what I did, it might have been, it was a Stephen King book. I think I actually read his book on writing because I'm trying to write a book, and his book on writing is what it's called, was so good. And he reads the audio version, but I needed like a palate cleanse from this. And of course, now we were back in a novel romance, like, give me something that
we walked in and said, who has the saddest book that they've ever read? Please recommend it to us. We want to buy it right now. It better be on the shelves.
Right. And I think there was like several people in there like, what's wrong with us? Why are we in here asking? Like, we all need to just go to therapy and have like talk.
Right.
Let's talk it out, do a group hug, and we'll go read a happy book.
And then we started talking about mysteries and thrillers and horror books. And there was just these old ladies in the corner that were like, what is going on?
Yeah, because there was the one about, there was something that happened to the mother.
Yeah. And then there was a mother over there that was like,
they're like,
shivering.
no, Mom, don't worry about that.
Right.
Like, and then I brought up The Cement Garden, which is a story about a mother dying, and they cover it up by burying her in concrete in the basement and putting her like in a giant chest,
right? Like
a treasure chest type looking thing.
The mom was freaking out.
Right. She was, this is the wrong day to come to it. So if you're in the store with us, we apologize. We hope that you bought something happy while you're that has an ending better.
A nice little bubbly romance.
So now the cool thing about this challenge is now I get my turn.
Yeah.
Do you have any guesses?
I actually have none. I'm so excited because I've been able to this year expand my genres a lot. Like I've read some classical books. I've read more mystery. I want to get more into fantasy because I really haven't gotten that much into fantasy. I'm really excited. Is it a horror book?
No.
No?
It's not a horror book. Okay. And it was one, I want to say, I have to go, don't quote me on this. I want to say it was written in the 50s.
Oh, okay.
And also, this was what was cool. When we were at a novel romance today, I had the best conversation because the person and I wish I had gotten her name, but she was so familiar with a lot of the books that I would read. Yeah. And I was telling her about this challenge, and they were like, this is so cool. I'm like, yeah, we were pretty hyped about it too. And I said, well, let me show you. As I pulled up on Goodreads, because it's, I don't want to tell you where it is, but I pulled it up and I showed it to her. Like, this is what what I'm going to have her read. She was like, oh, and so that's good. But I don't know if I would say, I don't know if people would consider it a classic, but in my opinion, it carries the same sadness through the whole thing that this book does, but it's through an entirely different topic. So I figured I would return sadness with sadness.
Thank you very much. It's actually much appreciated.
But this is one of the books that like I would want, like if we had a big bookshelf, like
Yeah.
one of those fancy home library kind of things, I would want this book on the shelf somewhere because I could recommend this to people because it's pretty heavy. But I think the reason that I liked If He Had Been With Me, because I know that they probably use profanity, but
Yeah.
it didn't stand out. Like I've read books, I'm sure you have too. Like you showed me one in the store where you were like, this author loves this.
For anyone watching, it was Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. And if you know, you know.
Yeah, I for one did not know. And now I do. And I was like, there's no way. And you said, okay, random page. And like, whoa.
I said, there's going to be spice if you flipped it like 2 random pages and you get a whole scene.
And this bring on a new definition to spice. There was a lot of anatomy. It was like, this is definitely, please don't recommend something like that for me.
I would never, don't worry.
Because I'm like, I would recommend, I'm trying to, and that's the thing with this challenge. We want to recommend books that we enjoy, but we think somebody else would enjoy who wouldn't normally read that. So something that wouldn't show up on your TBR, that would be kind of cool. Well, that's all we've got. So I guess the next step is to have you, when you can finally finish the sequel to If He Had Been With Me, which I guess that's, how long is this going to take? Because it's been forever.
I am so scared to finish it. I do not want to finish it. I would love
but
for
you
it to
kind of know
last so
how it
long.
ends, right?
No, there's been so many other things in this new sequel. Like you guys, it is gut wrenching.
Well, so I just need you to speed up that process because of the.
I will be destroyed for a week.
If for any other reason, do it for my listener in Uruguay who is like, you got to hurry up.
We got you, buddy.
Because they're like, hey, we want to listen to this podcast and I want to hear about some different books. So I'm going to drop links to all of this stuff that we mentioned, all of these books, and I'll put it on the website. The simplest way to get to it is haveyoureadthispodcast.com, and we'll put like the recommendations and some information on this little fun challenge that we're doing. And I'll put up on TikTok, I think I may do, when you actually get to open that book, because it's here, it's just in a box.
Yeah.
Because I don't want you to see it. So maybe we'll do that, is like do a reveal when you get to open that box. Because I kind of like to see your face when you get it, because and it would be good to go back and talk about this later, because I feel like I know you well enough. I'm like, you're probably going to open this book and be like, what? I'm anticipating confusion. That's what I'm anticipating. So, and then when you read it, I'm hoping that it crushes you as much as your suggestion crushes me.
Good thing.
So anything else you got to add before we check out?
No, guys, thanks for having me.
Yep.
I'll be back soon.
All right. Till next time.
I've loved him my whole life, and somewhere along the way, that love didn't change but grew. It grew to fill the parts of me that I did not have when I was a child. It grew with every new longing of my body and desire, until there was not a piece of me that did not love him. And when I look at him, there is no other feeling in me